Welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 409. I'm the host, Kyle Anzalone. On today's show, I'm going to be breaking down the leaks from the Pentagon by Jad Teixeira and going over, why I think about that, the arrest, some of the stories and news that has broke from that over the past couple days, and a few more stories on the war in Ukraine and also some escalation between the U.S. and China. So a lot of important stuff to cover on today's show. Be sure to share the show. We are hosted at the Libertarian Institute. We repost the show on the blog at antiwar.com. You find the video version of the show at YouTube, Rumble, and Odysee. And it's up anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Follow me on Twitter at KyleAnzalone_, where I post the show and all of the articles that I write. All right, everybody, let's get into it. All right, so as me and Connor were recording the show on Thursday that we released on Friday, I mean, just minutes before, this 21-year-old Jad Teixeira was arrested in, just out of, I guess, coincidence. This happened about 15 minutes down the road from me. I live a couple towns over from this young man, and he is accused of being the person who posted hundreds, apparently, of highly classified Pentagon documents, mostly relating to the war in Ukraine, on a Discord server that were later seeped out to the rest of the media. And now I believe between 50 and 53 of those documents are available to the public. And then there are apparently over 300 more that select members of the media only have access to. And I'll get into that a little bit. So, Dave had the write-up on Thursday, and he wrote that the FBI arrested the 21 member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard as the suspected leaker of classified documents from the Pentagon and other U.S. government agencies that have surfaced online. Teixeira was first named before the arrest as the potential leaker by the New York Times. The paper conducted an investigation with the website Bellingcat, which is funded by the EU and often praised by U.S. intelligence officials to have been identified as the leaker. And of course, people on this show will probably be most familiar with Bellingcat because of that website, that those people doing work, I think particularly in Syria, on chemical weapons, and so we've debunked a lot of Bellingcat claims with that and Russiagate on this show over the past couple of years. I think in a lot of ways, Bellingcat is essentially a government-funded outlet, no different than, say, a Voice of America, and they just use the layer of, seeming as an independent news agency to give their reporting more claims. But here they worked with the New York Times, and I guess so I was surprised as soon as these documents started leaking online. One of the reasons I was suspicious that they were somehow fake, or that this story was somehow just completely being misreported, was the documents were pictures. He took pictures of a document he printed out. Most of the papers looked like they were folded into quarters, and the reason I was suspicious is there were things in the background, and so it seemed to me that whoever had done this should have been almost immediately identified by at least the NSA, that they would have the ability to, look at the pictures that were being publicly reported on, and then find out when they were first posted on the internet. That seems to me to be an ability that the NSA would have to have. And so that the NSA and that the U.S. government apparently were not the ones who, really found out the identity of this young man first is something that does not seem right to me. And I guess I do have some suspicions that maybe, through Bellingcat, information was given essentially to the New York Times to shift this story away from the leaks and to the leaker. Because that's essentially what's happened here over the weekend in the United States. For the most part, stories about the leak have kind of slowed down, about, what the information means. There's not a lot of analysis really on that in the media. Most of the, analysis, most of the discussions are now around Teixeira himself, which, it's not completely irrelevant to discuss him and how he had access to this information, However, most of the discussion should be on the leads, assuming that they are authentic, and this isn't in any way a disinformation campaign. So that is a very interesting thing that's happened about how this person was identified. Now, from the New York Times perspective, this is really weird, right? Where you would find out the name of a person, find out who a person is, who clearly has access to and has leaked a lot of important information to the public, a lot of really important stories, assuming the information is true. U.S. spying on allies, the JDAM's not working, the war going on until 2024, the strikes in Russia, some of the stuff we'll go over today. Assuming again that these documents are authentic, this kid is leaking very important information. So I guess had I been the one to figure out who Jad Teixeira was, I would have been interested in talking with him, finding out what more he could give me, not giving him up. But that's essentially what the U.S. government, or excuse me, the New York Times, acted as a branch of the U.S. government and helped it to track down the leaker rather than trying to release more information to the public, which really should be what the New York Times is doing. So back to Dave's article here. According to the Times report, the paper discussed Teixeira with the U.S. government officials and asked for a comment from the FBI before the agency made his name public. Today, the Justice Department arrested Jad Douglas Teixeira in connection with an investigation into unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information. Teixeira is an employee of the United States Air Force National Guard, Attorney General Merrick Garland said after the arrest. Teixeira is a member of the intelligence wing of the Massachusetts Air National Guard, but it's not clear how the young airman would have had access to so many top-secret documents. According to the Times, he was promoted to Airman First Class in July, the third enlisted rank. So this is still a pretty low-ranking young man. These are highly classified documents, apparently, but, this kid wasn't assigned to the Pentagon, so it's not, as if he had assets to some like highly sensitive computers or something like that. He was working on Odysee Air Force Base in Cape Cod. There's so many questions here. I really still think about this whole story, and some of this information that's coming out in these documents appears to definitely be true. We'll get into one that I wrote for antiwar.com where we have confirmation from the Pentagon that, it's correct. And so there's a lot of questions still here. But again, how exactly he had access to this is still, very suspicious. Teixeira is accused of posting documents on a server on Discord, a messaging platform mainly used by gamers. The chat where he was sending the documents was private but had about 25 members, a group of young men and teenage boys. One member of the Discord server started releasing documents to other chat rooms in March, and the documents were eventually discovered by the Times. According to the Washington Post, there were 300 photos of documents that Teixeira has allegedly posted, and I believe that both the New York Times and the Washington Post are just hoarding those documents, that they're not planning on sharing those with the rest of us, and who knows exactly what's in them, what they're going to report. A 17-year-old who was a member of the Discord server spoke to the Times and described the person who allegedly leaked the document as anti-war and a Christian who just wanted to inform some of his friends what was going on. And, I've heard other things about this kid, especially from the mainstream media, that he's anti-Semitic or, somehow, a bad person and has incorrect thoughts about race and things like that. I'm not, have no idea as far as what was posted in this Discord server. There's apparently a video where he's sharing remarks, but again, that hasn't been made public either. And so, we're just relying on people to communicate this, and maybe he's sitting there, actually saying Hail Hitler or something crazy like that, and really is anti-Semitic, or, maybe he cracked a joke that young men tend to crack about, Jews or something like that. And so again, until we see more, it's really impossible to know how much of all this is true about Teixeira himself. But again, he's a very important figure in all this, and to trying to understand, why the information was released and how it was released and how much of this truly is accurate. So let's get into some of the leaks here. Biden looking at expanding internet surveillance after Discord leaks. This is one of the main plays here, it seems, is that the Biden administration appears poised to increase internet surveillance in response to the leaked Pentagon documents that appear to have been posted on the messaging platform Discord. NBC News reported on Wednesday that the administration is looking at expanding how it monitors social media sites and chat rooms. The report cited unnamed senior administration officials and a congressional official who said the administration wants to expand the universe of social media sites that the U.S. law enforcement and intelligence agencies monitor. According to the congressional source, the report said the intelligence community is now grappling with how it can scrub platforms like Discord in search of relevant material to avoid a similar leak in the future. According to the Washington Post, the top secret documents were posted on a private Discord server that a member later posted on public servers in March. The documents have been circulating on the internet since then and were discovered by the New York Times last week. Expanding internet surveillance is just one way the Biden administration is considering responding to the Discord leak. Internally, the Pentagon has reportedly tightened control of classified material and is looking at steps to take, other steps it can take. So this is, I think how the government is going to respond. They're going to try to crack down on that. And then we're also going to probably see some new legislation or something like the Restrict Act getting more momentum. I'm also seeing a lot of people like Lindsey Graham coming out and saying that this young man damaged the national security of the United States of America and put our service members at risk, and Americans are more likely to die today than they were yesterday because of what this I have seen no proof that any of that is true. A lot of these documents, were not the most recent. It's not like he was sharing things that were happening in Ukraine yesterday or the day before. They're from months ago. And then additionally, I haven't seen anything in here that would, again, suggest that it's putting any kind of Americans at risk, just revealing information about what the U.S. government is doing in Ukraine and surveilling our allies. So the White House says don't report on the Pentagon leaks. This is, kind of funny. And, essentially they got what they wanted, right? We're not reporting on the leaks anymore. We're reporting on the leaker. That's what the mainstream media is doing. The White House on Monday warned outlets, this was last Monday, a week ago, publishing information contained in the top secret leaked Pentagon from the Pentagon, U.S. other agencies have surfaced on the internet without confirming the validity of the documents. This information has no business in the public domain. White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby told reporters, that's not for him to decide. It's up for journalists to decide, what is to report or not. But, they don't want some of this information in the public. I think a lot of what's come out already is the most humiliating stuff for the U.S. government. And if we don't actually get to see the rest of the documents, it's going to be very interesting to see, what the Washington Post or the New York Times says is in there. So Kirby added, it has no business, if you don't mind me saying, on the front pages of newspapers or on television. It is not intended for public consumption and should not be there. So, this is who Kirby is. That he's a company man. He works for the government. He's a pretty good spokesperson as far as it goes, spinning and stuff like that. But these comments are just horrific. Additionally, he said we don't know what's out there. We don't know who's responsible for this. Obviously, that has since changed. I don't know if they have more they intend to post, so we're watching this and monitoring it the best we can. It'll be interesting to see how many more of these documents we get, though. So now these are, I think the next 4 stories are more stories about the leaked documents themselves. Here we go. Leaks suggest Zelensky would use long-range U.S. weapons to hit Russian territory. One highly classified Pentagon document that surfaced online suggests Ukrainian President Zelensky will use long-range weapons provided by the U.S. to strike Russian territory. The document, a U.S. intelligence report, says Zelensky suggested striking Russian deployment locations in the Rostov Oblast using unmanned aerial vehicles because Kiev does not possess long-range missiles capable of hitting targets that far. According to NBC News, the document says Zelensky expressed concern that Kiev does not possess long-range weapons to hit Russian targets in the Rostov Oblast during a conversation with the Ukrainian commander-in-chief and another unnamed official. The document also reveals that the U.S. has been spying on Zelensky as its source to signals intelligence, which means information obtained by intercepting communications. Ukrainian officials have been demanding that the U.S. provide Army Tactical Missile Systems, ATACMs, missiles with a range of up to 190 miles. The longest range artillery munition the U.S. has provided Ukraine so far is the ground-launched small-diameter bomb, which can hit targets 94 miles away. Ukrainian officials have insisted that they would use the ATAMs to target Russian territory, but leaks suggest otherwise. Hawks in Congress have been urging the Biden administration to send the rockets to Ukraine, despite risks of major Russian escalation in response to the advanced U.S. arms being used to hit Russian territory. So, stories like this are incredibly important for the U.S. public to have, because we have Zelensky telling us that, we won't use those missiles to hit Russia, when they are saying that they're going to use them to strike Russia. And the American people need to be aware of that, because if they are not, then, our politicians can give these weapons to Ukraine without us understanding the real consequences of what could happen. Next up, leaked documents say U.S. doesn't expect Russia-Ukraine peace talks in 2023. The DIA assessment that has been leaked online says that U.S. expects the war in Ukraine to go on until 2024 without any peace talks between the warring sides, the Washington Post reported on Wednesday. Negotiations to end the conflict are unlikely during 2023 in all considered scenarios, the DIA analysis reads. The document says that even if Ukraine regains a significant amount of territory from Russia and unsustainable losses on Russian forces, it would not lead to peace talks. Another leak that was reported also says the Post thinks thinks it's unlikely Ukraine will regain any significant territory and is in its expected counteroffensive, a stark difference from what the Biden administration has been saying publicly. Both documents, the Post said, could bolster the argument that the U.S. should be pushing for negotiations. And so, the U.S. has been telling us, I think, that there's going to be a spring offensive, that Ukraine's going to retake territory, and then they should look at negotiating with Russia. And they know that this isn't going to happen, so they're just, lying to the American people. Asked about the DIA assessment, a U.S. official told the Post that it's up to the Ukrainian President Zelensky when to talk with Russia, demonstrating Washington's lack of interest in fostering peace talks. The Biden administration has also discouraged peace talks throughout the war, including recently by rejecting the idea of Beijing as mediator. The White House also explicitly came out against the ceasefire or any pause in fighting before the Chinese President Xi traveled to Moscow. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the world should not be fooled by any Chinese calls for peace. And so, just making sure that there is no progress on the peace talks seems to be the main concern of the White House. I talked about this one a little bit on Thursday's show. Leads showing U.S. spied on South Korea spark outrage in Seoul. And so, this is pretty predictable, right? That if you're spying on a country's leadership, that country is going to get upset. Although Yoon seems to still be pretty, that's the South Korean president, still seems to be pretty happy with the Americans. All right, next up, I wrote this one for antiwar.com on April 16th. I don't know where I got February from there. This one I think is one of the more interesting stories from the lead so far, and a part of that is because the defense official actually confirmed that this was, I don't know if he, from the Politico story, it doesn't make it sound clear that the official said that, this document is authentic, but he said the information is accurate. So American smart bombs are failing in Ukraine. Here we go. A high number of American smart bombs are failing to achieve their objective in Ukraine, a Pentagon official told Politico, confirming information in documents leaked by Jad Teixeira. The White House ordered the Joint Direct Attack Munition Extended Range, JDAM-ER, be sent to Ukraine late last year. In March, the Pentagon confirmed the weapons were operational in Ukraine. While the document leaked by Teixeira is undated, it shows that Ukraine fired JDAMs on February 15th and 21st. So a couple weeks before, we had known that they were operational. We now know they're operating in February. The JDAM-ER is a kit that attaches to unguided dumb bombs. I think there's one that fits on a 500-pound bomb and one that fits on a 2,000-pound bomb. I'm not sure which one they are sending, or if they're sending both. Upgrading the weapons into GPS guided smart bombs with a range of over 50 miles. Last week, highly classified Pentagon documents showed that 4 out of 9 JDAMs fired by Ukrainian pilots missed their targets due to Russian GPS jamming capabilities. The documents say that the other artillery systems, such as the M270s and the HIMARS, are also being impacted by Moscow's forces using GPS jamming. In response to the Russian tactics, the document recommends that Ukrainian forces destroy or disrupt jammers to the maximal extent possible before more JDAM-ER employments. A second issue causing JDAM failures in Ukraine is inappropriately arming the munition. Politico reported an unnamed defense official confirmed in some cases the bomb fuses were not armed when they were released, causing the weapon to fail to detonate. The official claimed that the Ukrainian military put in place safeguards to prevent the mistake from repeating. It is unclear how many JDAM-ERs the U.S. has sent to Ukraine. The document notes that 1,000 arming lanyards were provided to Kiev, and Washington planned to send more soon. This suggests that the White House is planning to send more than 1,000 smart bomb kits to Ukraine. Teixeira was arrested last week and charged under the Espionage Act. The 21-year-old is a member of the Massachusetts National Guard. Teixeira posted the documents in a Discord channel. So the rest I have there is just a little bit of review. Next up, I have a couple more stories about the war in Ukraine before we move on here. Russia, Ukraine frees POWs in Orthodox Easter swap. This was from Thomas Knapp on April 16th at antiwar.com. The Wagner Group founder announced Saturday that he marked Orthodox Easter Sunday by ordering more than 100 Ukrainian prisoners of war be freed, according to Reuters. Per the Associated Press, Ukrainian presidential advisor confirmed the Easter prisoner swap with 103 Ukrainians and an unspecified number of Russian troops on their way home. The exchange includes fighters captured by both sides in the area around Bakhmut, where both regimes report an uptick in the tempo of fighting as of Sunday. So I guess that's about 200 and something, people that are, going home and hopefully getting a little bit better treatment. But, who knows? Maybe they'll just throw them back on the front lines and they were better off in each other's jails. While neither side seems to have seriously considered an all-out Easter truce, the Ukraine rejected Putin's proposal for a 36-hour Christmas truce. Larger prisoner exchanges are always a good sign that, this could pass into wider ranging negotiations. And so, prisoner swaps are always preferred. Always a good thing to have here. Next up, this from Day to Camp, April 13th. Germany approves Poland's request to send MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine. And so this is not, this is not maybe a significant escalation as Poland was already sending, I believe they were MiG-29s to Ukraine, but this I think changes things a little bit because it puts Germany another half step closer to sending warplanes to Ukraine. And, I think they've very effectively used, this incrementalism against Germany to get them to give more and more weapons to Ukraine. Ukrainian Prime Minister appeals directly to Lloyd Austin for long-range missiles and jets. And, of course, we just talked about this before, how if this happens, the Pentagon is aware, the White House is aware that Ukraine will use these weapons to carry out attacks inside of Russia. Not good news. So hopefully the White House continues to remain strong on that and not give those weapons to Ukraine. This is a disturbing one. Ukraine calls for Black Sea to become Sea of NATO. The Ukrainian foreign minister is calling on NATO to expand its military activities in the Black Sea, urging the alliance to transform the waters into a sea of NATO. The Black Sea is instrumental for making the whole Europe peaceful and future-oriented, the Ukrainian foreign minister told a Black Sea Security Conference in Bucharest via video link. Sadly, it is also a showcase of how rapidly things can deteriorate if one neglects threats. It's time to turn the Black Sea into what the Baltic Sea has become, a sea of NATO. The Black Sea has become a potential flashpoint for conflict between Russia and NATO, which is demonstrated by the downing of a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone after and encountered a Russian fighter jet in the waters over the Black Sea in March. In the years leading up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. and NATO steadily increased their military activity in the Black Sea. Tensions came to a head in June 2021 when a British warship sailed 12 nautical miles off the coast of Crimea. That was revealed to be an intentional provocation to draw a Russian reaction. NATO members Turkey, Romania, Bulgaria have Black Sea coast, and the Ukrainian foreign minister said all NATO members in both the Black and Baltic Sea should integrate their air and missile defense systems with Ukraine. Over in Moscow, the Kremlin brushed off the idea of the Black Sea becoming a NATO sea, saying the Black Sea will never be a NATO sea. This is a common sea. That's the Russian spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. Moreover, this is indivisible security. So yeah, this won't happen, but it is concerning if they try to do that. Russia completes Belarusian pilots training on nuclear weapons use, and we've been talking about this in recent weeks, that as Russia has transferred more, as the West has, NATO have moved closer to Russia's borders and moved, more military bases closer to Russian borders, we're seeing a response from the Kremlin, and one that responses is by stationing some nuclear weapons in Belarus, and apparently their pilots are trained on using those weapons now. I wrote this article for antiwar.com yesterday. After feared global shortage, rift in EU emerges over grain glut. Poland and Hungary will pause imports of Ukrainian grain. The European Union agricultural policies in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine have caused a glut of wheat in Central Europe, harming the region's farmers. On Saturday, Hungarian agricultural minister announced Budapest would temporarily block imports of Ukrainian wheat and oilseeds until July 30th. In a separate announcement, the leader of the ruling Law and Justice Party in Poland said Warsaw would also halt grain imports from Kiev. The Polish ban extends to other food products such as beef and eggs. Warsaw and Budapest made the decision in response to demands made by struggling farmers. Wheat prices in Central Europe dropped after a bumper crop and additional Ukrainian imports. The European Union denounced the actions by Poland and Hungary as unacceptable. The trade policy is of EU exclusive competence, therefore unilateral actions are not acceptable, said the EU Commission spokesperson for Trade and Agriculture. In such challenging times, it is crucial to coordinate and align all decisions with the EU. After Russia invaded Ukraine last February, the EU lifted sanctions, custom custom duties and quotas on Ukrainian grain imports. So, there's limits on how much, these countries can trade with each other of different types of products. And so those were all lifted on Ukraine. And then any kind of taxes that were, with the Ukrainian food products would have been subject to were lifted as well. So some grain that was exported via the Black Sea was rerouted through Europe by rail as well. However, a portion of that wheat became stuck in Central Europe as these nations lack infrastructure to move the influx of grain. In April 2022, the EU warned there is widespread international concern that the Russian war will provoke a global food crisis. However, according to the Financial Times report on Saturday, the desperate rush for food has not materialized. Struggling with high debt and weakening economies, poorer nations in Africa and elsewhere have also recently began seeking to curtail food imports. The outlet noted a reduction in demand will put additional downward pressure on prices for the struggling Polish and Hungarian farmers. So, this is interesting, as Poland has been one of the closest partners with Ukraine and one of the countries, particularly NATO countries, most demanding that the West do more to support Kiev. And here it seems, when it comes to something that can actually harm them, they're not interested in doing more to help Ukraine. Russia's Pacific Fleet conducts weapons tests. This from Connor Freeman at antiwar.com, April 16th. The Russian Navy's Pacific Fleet is set to carry out various weapons tests, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced on Friday. Moscow's drills come amid heightened tensions as the region is as numerous large-scale war games led by Washington's allies are also going on or have just concluded. The weapons test and combat exercises are being described as an inspection of Moscow's Pacific Fleet. The main objective of this inspection is to increase the ability of the armed forces to repel aggression of a probable enemy from the direction of ocean and sea, the defense minister explained. According to the chief of general staff, the Russian Navy will be put on high alert during the drills, and one of the primary goals of the exercise is ensuring the strategic nuclear submarines' combat readiness. Forces will also be deployed to training areas for combat exercises such as Russia's Sakhalin Island, where there will be enemy landing simulation. Similar drills will also be held on its southern Kuril Islands, some of which are claimed by Tokyo in a territorial dispute dating back to the end of World War II. The Russian defense minister noted the drills will see the fleet locate and destroy enemy submarines, naval strike groups, and land equipment. Russian Air Force will also participate in the drills, and air defense units will cover possibly sensitive areas. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that the weapons tests are, in a way, a response to the increasing tensions in the region and U.S.-led war drills. This is common practice. It has been consistently carried out in recent years and continues. This is about maintaining necessary levels of combat readiness of our armed forces, Peskov said during a daily news brief. However, this year has seen and will continue to see massive U.S.-led NATO exercises in the region with its allies Seoul and Tokyo. The White House's strategy of refusing diplomacy and drastically ramping up military pressure on Pyongyang has led North Korea to launch a record number of missile tests. During the past few days, North Korea launched an intercontinental ballistic missile, which was followed by U.S. and South Korean air exercises involving at least one American B-52 bomber. Additionally, on Saturday, South Korea's military fired warning shots to repel a North Korean patrol vessel it claimed to have violated its northern limit line drawn up at the end of the 53 Korean War while chasing a Chinese fishing boat. Officials said that due to poor visibility, a high-speed South Korean vessel crashed into the Chinese boats, causing some sailors to incur minor injuries. So this is, one of the reasons why these drills and everything going on in the region is so dangerous. You have a South Korean boat shooting at a North Korean boat that was chasing a Chinese fishing boat, and the South Korean boat ended up running into the Chinese fishing boat. These kind of accidents can spiral into larger conflicts. I don't think this particular one will, based on the fact that it was a Chinese fishing boat and nobody from South Korea shot, nobody from North Korea. At the same time, these things can escalate quickly. And so now I like to get into the last article that I wrote yesterday for antiwar.com. U.S. South Korea to begin large-scale war games this week. Over 100 American and South Korean warplanes will take part in large-scale joint aerial war games. The military exercises come as North Korea warns of a realistic chance of nuclear war. On Monday, 1,400 soldiers will begin participating in the 12-day war games. The military aircraft will involve advanced fighter jets such as the F-35 and F-16. Chief of Staff for the Republic of Korea Air Force's Ground Command, Lee Bom-ki, said, through these exercises, we will be able to reaffirm the solid South Korea-U.S. alliance and further develop combat operational capabilities to another level. Washington and Seoul have conducted a series of war games in recent weeks. In mid-March, the U.S. flew a B-1 bomber over the Korean peninsula. The show of force was quickly followed by the Full Eagle war games. Full Eagle was the largest live-fire military drills in South Korea in 5 years. In April, Washington conducted anti-submarine operations with Tokyo and Seoul. Shortly thereafter, the U.S. ordered a B-52 bomber to fly over the peninsula. Pyongyang has reciprocated with weapons testing. North Korea claimed that they successfully launched an underwater drone capable of creating a nuclear tsunami and an intercontinental ballistic missile. The U.S. and South Korea typically assert that the exercises are defensive. However, North Korea views the war games as preparation for regime change in Pyongyang. A recent article in North Korean state media said the U.S. and its followers should never forget the fact that their rival state has possessed nuclear attack capability. The U.S. has parroted that the military drills with South Korea are defensive, the KCNA editorial said, but they can never conceal with such veils as defensive and routine their aggressive colors as provocateurs, and the fact that the current exercises are deliberate military action prompted by their sinister scheme to wreak peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. All right, everybody. I think I'm going to wrap up the show there for today. I did have a couple stories on China, but I think I'll save them for later in the week. I appreciate you all tuning in so much. And if you can, share the show, like the show, subscribe to the show, do whatever you can to help it get out there to more people. Anytime you interact with, the post on social media, the algorithm is going to, show the show to a few more people. So, you're helping to get it out there just by hitting the like button. But, follow me, retweet the show. That would be really great. Thanks, everyone.